Hail and welcome back to my first build guide for 2015. My name is Luke and in this guide I'll show you how to build this fantastic little shed that can go just about anywhere on your layout. It's great because it has no specific error or location, and shed like this can be found just about anywhere on the planet. I'll start by showing you how to make the corrugated iron. It's quite simple. With the right gear, the materials you want are some card not too thick, a small piece of foil, some PVA, some baking paper, a spring, the longer the better. The grooves you'll want to be quite fine, so a small spring may work better, and finally something to roll the spring with. I'm using a barbecue spatula. Start by cutting the card to about the size of the roof you want. You'll want it to be a little larger so you can square up the direction of the grooves with the shed frame and trim off the excess. Next, I secured some baking paper to the table and put the card in the middle. Apply some glue to the back of the card and use my finger to evenly spread the glue thinly over the surface of the card. The card will probably curl. I use the curl to help evenly lay the foil over the card and smooth out the foil with my finger. Here's where the spring comes in. Line the spring up with the card and try your best to get the direction of the spring coils to be square with the card. Use the spatula to roll the spring along the card, leaving the grooves in the foil. Once the glue has dried, it's very easy to peel the baking paper away from the card. Trim away the excess foil and be careful not to press on the back of the card too hard, as you might squash out some of the detail in the foil. I give the back a light coat of acrylic silver paint and then flip it over, ready for a light wash of black paint to help highlight the grooves in the foil. I make the wash using a very small drop of Washington detergent, some black acrylic paint and a lot of water. As you can see, it's a very light wash. Now moving on to the frame, you can use matchsticks. However, I'm using these artist matchsticks that don't have the flammable tips, otherwise you could just cut the flammable tips off again with the baking paper. Squirt out a small amount of glue and spread it out. Start laying the matchsticks down and don't worry if it gets messy. Now on top of the already laid matchsticks, apply another layer of glue and press the glue into the gaps between the matchsticks. I use a spare matchstick to help square them off and wipe away the excess glue from the top, then leave it to dry just like the foil. Once it's dry, it's very easy to remove from the baking paper. I'm using this grid on the cutting mat to help me line up and trim the excess matchsticks. To make the side wall, simply mark it with a pen and then use hobby knife to trim. And again, I'm using the graph to help cut the slant for the roof, and you'll need to do this for both sides. The back wall is a little tall, so I measure up the height on one and then trim off the excess, then sand each piece to get a nice smooth finish to help get the shed glued together at right angles. I once again use the cutting mat grid. If you look carefully, you can see there is a bit of a lip where the side wall meets the back wall. In order for the roof to sit correctly, you'll need to sand it so the slant is constant right through to the back wall. With the frame dry, I set it against the foil and square up the lines in the foil with the side walls to make sure they are straight. Once I'm satisfied, I trim the card again. When trimming, you need to be careful not to press too hard on the foil, as you may squash out the detail in the foil. Give it a test fit, and now the frame is ready for painting. All I use for painting is a very light coat of burnt umber. Once it's painted, simply stick the roof onto the frame with some PVA glue and leave it to dry to weather the shed. I use artist pastels of various colors. Here I'm using yellow ochre with a little burnt umber, and a very small amount of black. If you overdo it with the black, just go back over the area with one of the lighter colors before you weather the roof. Touch up the edges with some silver paint, just like the frame of the shed. Use pastels to weather the roof. I tend to use a little more red to help simulate rust, as well as a range of other colors. If you want, you cancel it down with a matte spray like dull coat. If you do apply some dull coat, you may find you need to give it a second coat of weathering with the pastels. Well, that finishes the build guard. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe I've given you some ideas for future building projects. You may have plenty more videos on the way for 2015, and I look forward to reading your comments below. Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more great videos to come. Thanks.